Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayana Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamatirye Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Ashtaki. So continuing with the discussion on Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 14, King Chitraketu's Lamentation, text number 17 onwards. So Maharaj Chitraketu, we studied yesterday, he was in his kingdom and he had 10 million wives. And he did not have a son from any of the wives. He was lamenting, and then Angida Rishi appeared in the kingdom. He came, he visited. And Maharaj Chitraketu just bowed down to him and welcomed him. And now Angida Rishi is starting to speak. Angida Uvacha Apite Anamayam Swasti Prakriti Nam Tathatmana Yatha Prakritir Bhirgupta Umana Raja Cha Saptabhi. The great sage Angida said, "My dear king, I hope that your body and mind and your royal associates and paraphernalia are well. When the 7 properties of material nature, the total material energy, the ego, and the 5 objects of sense gratification are in proper order, the living entity within the material elements is happy. Without these 7 elements, one cannot exist. Similarly, a king is always protected by 7 elements. His instructor, Swami or Guru, his ministers, his kingdom, his fort, his treasury, his royal order, and his friends." As it is quoted by Sridhar Swami in his Bhagavatam commentary, Swami Anatyo Janapada Durga Dravina Sanchaya Dando Mitram Chatasyaitaha Sapta Prakritayo Mata. A king is not alone. He first has a spiritual master, the supreme guide. Then comes his ministers, his kingdom, his fortifications, his treasury, his system of law and order, and his friends or allies. If these 7 are properly maintained, the king is happy. Similarly, as explained in Bhagavad Gita, Dehinosmanyatade, the living entity, the soul is within the material covering of the Mahatattva, ego, and Panch Tanmatra, the 5 objects of sense gratification. When these 7 are in proper order, the living entity is in a mood of pleasure. Generally, when the associates of the king are quiet and obedient, the king can be happy. Therefore, the great sage Angida Rishi inquired about the king's personal health and the good fortune of his 7 associates. When we inquire from a friend whether everything is well, we are concerned not only with his personal self, but also with his family, his source of income, and his assistants or servants. All of them must be well, and then a person can be happy. So this material world, everybody has so many things connected with him that if something goes wrong here or there, then he becomes unhappy. Just like the king, although he had everything, Janma, Aishwarya, Shrut, Shri, everything he had. Only thing he didn't have is a son. Text 18. Atmanam prakriti shvaddha nidhai shreya apnuya ragya tatha prakritiyo naradeva hitadhaya. O king, O lord of humanity, when a king directly depends upon his associates and follows their instructions, he is happy. Similarly, when his associates offer their gifts and activities to the king and follow his orders, they're also happy. The actual happiness of a king and his dependents is described in this verse. A king should not simply give orders to his dependents because he is a supreme. Sometimes he must follow their instructions. Similarly, the dependents should depend upon the king. This mutual dependence will make everyone happy. Means then everybody is performing their duties properly. Api dara prajamatya bhritya shreneyo atmantrina paura janpada bhupa atmanja vashvartina. O king, are your wives, citizens, secretaries, and servants, and the merchants who sell spices and oil under your control? Are you also in full control of the ministers, the inhabitants of your palace, your provincial governors, your sons, and your other dependents? The master or king and his subordinates should be independent, or should be interdependent. Through cooperation, both of them can be happy. यस्यात्मानो वशश्चेत्स्यात् सर्वे तद्वशगा इमे लोकः सपाला यच्छन्ति सर्वे बलिं तंसता. If the king's mind is fully controlled, all his family members and governmental officers are subordinate to him. His provincial governors present taxes on time without resistance, and what to speak of lesser servants. Angira Rishi asked the king whether his mind was also under control. This is most essential for happiness. Atmana priyatenatma parata swat eva lakshya alabdha kamam tvam chintaya shavalam mukham. O King Chitraketu, I can observe that your mind is not pleased. You seem not to have achieved your desired goal. Is this because of you yourself, or has it been caused by others? Your pale face reflects your deep anxiety. So that's why it's called face is the index of mind. So the face shows what's going on inside the mind. And if one is not happy, then it shows up on the face. But at the same time, if one is spiritually advanced and spiritually very happy, internally he is happy, it will show up on the face, and the face will be shining brightly. Just like once Prabhupada, when he was in New York, he was crossing the road with his disciples, and there was a policeman on the other side of the road. And when he saw Prabhupada crossing, he came running towards Prabhupada. And he didn't know what is ISKCON and what were Hare Krishnas. That was so much in the early stages. And all he said was, he didn't even say Swamiji because he didn't know. He said, your face, you're shining, man, you're shining. Even in the cop noticed it. And this was because Prabhupada had that spiritual effulgence. Evam vikalpito rajan vidusha muninapi sahan prashraya vanato abhyaha praja kamastato munim. Shukdev Goswami said, O King Parikshit, although the great sage Angira knew everything, he inquired from the king in this way. Thus King Chitraketu, desiring his son, bent low in great humility and spoke to the great sage as follows. Since the face is the index to the mind, a saintly person can study the condition of one's mind by seeing his face. When Angira Rishi remarked about the king's discolored face, King Chitraketu explained the cause of his anxiety as follows. Chitraketu Ruvacha Bhagwan Kimna Viditam Tapo Jnana Samadhive Yoginam Dhasta Papanam Bhair Antaha Sharirishu. King Chitraketu said, O great Lord Angira, because of austerity, knowledge, and transcendental samadhi, you are freed from all the reactions of sinful life. Therefore, as a perfect yogi, you can understand everything, external and internal, regarding embodied, conditioned souls like us. Tathapi prichato bruyam brahmanatmani chintitam bhavato vidushchapi choditas tad anugyaya. O great soul, you are aware of everything, yet you are asking me why I am full of anxiety. Therefore, in response to your order, let me disclose the cause. Lokpalarapi prarthaya samrajyashvarya sampada nanandayantyati prajammam shutrit kamam ivapare. As a person aggrieved by hunger and thirst is not pleased by the external gratification of flower garlands or sandalwood pulp, I'm not pleased with my empire, opulence, or possessions, which are desirable even for great demigods, because I have no son. So we can imagine his opulence or possessions, he said, which are desirable even by great demigods. I have all that. And still he wasn't happy because he didn't have a son. ततः पाहि महाभाग पूर्वः सह गतं तमः यथा तरेम दुष्पारं प्रजया तद् विदेहिनः. Therefore, great sage, please save me and my forefathers who are descending to the darkness of hell, because I have no progeny. Kindly do something so that I may have a son to deliver us from hellish conditions. According to Vedic civilization, one gets married simply to have a son who is needed to offer oblations to his forefathers. King Chitraketu responsibly desired to beget a child so that he and his forefathers might be delivered from the darkest regions. He was concerned with how to get Pinda oblations in the next life, not only for himself, but also for his forefathers. Therefore, he requested Angira Rishi to favor him by doing something that could help him get a son. Shri Shukuvacha iti arthita sa bhagwan kripalur brahmana sutta shrapitva charum tvashtram tvashtara ramayajad vibhu. In response to the request of Maharaj Chitraketu, Angira Rishi, who was born of Lord Brahma's mind, was very merciful toward him. Because the sage was a greatly powerful personality, he performed a sacrifice by offering oblations of sweet rice to Tvashta. Now, Tvashta was the same demigod who was the father of Vishwarupa, and later he performed the sacrifice to have, what was his name? That big demon as his son to kill Indra. We just read about him. Somehow I just completely blank. I'm completely blank.
Prabhuji,
Yeah, Vritrasura. Somehow I just was completely blank. Thank you. Jeshta Shrestha cha Yaragyo Ahishinam cha Bharata Namna Krit Dyutistasya Yagyo Chishtam Adada Dvijaha. O Parikshit Maharaj, best of the Bharats, the remnants of the food offered in the Yagya were given by the great sage Angira to the first and most perfect among Chitraketu's millions of queens, whose name was Kritdyuti. Ataha nripatim rajan bhavitaikas atmajaha harsha shoka pradastubhyam iti brahma suto yayo. Thereafter the great sage told the king, O great king, now you will have a son who will be the cause of both jubilation and lamentation. The sage then left without waiting for Chitraketu's response. So Angira Rishi told Maharaj Chitraketu that the son will be the cause of great harsha and shoka, both jubilation and lamentation. And he left. He didn't explain anything. The word harsha means jubilation and shoka means lamentation. The king was overwhelmed with joy when he understood that he would have a son. Because of his great jubilation, he could not actually understand the statement of the sage Angira. He accepted it to mean that there would certainly be jubilation because of the birth of his future son, but that he would be the king's only son, and being very proud of his great wealth and empire, would not be very obedient to his father. That's what Maharaj Chitraketu was thinking. Maybe that's why the Rishi said that this son would be the cause of great lamentation and jubilation. Thus the king was satisfied, thinking, let there be son. It doesn't matter if he's not very obedient. In Bengal, there is a proverb that instead of having no maternal uncle, it is better to have a maternal uncle who's blind. The king accepted this philosophy, thinking that a disobedient son would be better than no son at all. The great sage Chanakya Pandit says, what is the use of a son who is neither a learned scholar nor a devotee? Such a son is like a blind, diseased eye, which always causes suffering. Nevertheless, the material world is so polluted that one wants to have a son, even though he is useless. This attitude was represented in the history of King Chitraketu. So he just wanted to have a son. Who cares? He'll be the cause of lamentation. But at least I have a son. Sapi tat prashanadeva chitraketuradharayat garbham kritadutir devi kritikagner ivatmanjam. As Kritika Devi, after receiving the semen of Lord Shiva from Agni, conceived a child named Skanda, Kartikeya. Kritadyuti, having received semen from Chitraketu, became pregnant after eating remnants of food from the yajna performed by Angira. Tasyanudinam garbha shukla paksha ivodupaha vavridhe shurasenesha tejasa shanakar ripa. After receiving semen from Maharaj Chitraketu, the king of Shurasena, Queen Kritadyuti gradually developed in her pregnancy. O King Parikshit, just as the moon during the bright fortnight. Athakal upavritte kumara samajayata janyan Shurasenanam shanvatam paramam mudam. Thereafter, in due course of time, a son was born to the king. Hearing news of this, all the inhabitants of the state of Sursena were extremely pleased. Rishtu Raja Kumarasya Snata Shuchiralankrataha Vachitva Shisho Vipra Karyamas Jatakam. King Chitraketu was especially pleased after purifying himself by bathing and by decorating himself with ornaments. He engaged learned Brahmins in offering of benedictions to the child and performing the birth ceremony. Tebhyo hiranyam rajitam vasansya bharanani cha graman hayan gajan pradhan dhenu namara udani shat. Dhenu nam arbudani shat. Wow. Unto the Brahmins who took part in the ritualistic ceremony, the king gave charity of gold, silver, garments, ornaments, villages, horses, and elephants, as well as 60 crores of cows, 600 million cows. Dhenunam arbudani shat. Shat means 6. Arbud, 100 million. So he gives 600 million cows. You can't even imagine. Vavarsha kamani anyesham parjanya videhina dhanyam yashasyam ayushyam kumarasya mahamana. As a cloud indiscriminately pours water on the earth, the beneficent King Chitraketu, to increase the reputation, opulence, and longevity of his son, distributed like rainfall all desirable things to everyone, so that they all come and bless his son to have long life. Kritra labde ath rajarshes tanya anudinam pituh yatha nihswasya krichrapte dhane sneho anvavardhata. When a poor man gets some money after great difficulty, his affection for the money increases daily. Similarly, when King Chitraketu, after great difficulty, received a son, his affection for the son increased day after day. Matus tvatpitaram putre sneho moho samudbhava kritadute sapatninam praja kama jaro bhavat. The mother's attraction and attention to the son, like that of the child's father, excessively increased. But the other wives, seeing Kritadyuti's son, were very much agitated, as if by high fevers, with the desire to have sons. So other, whatever, 10 million minus one, they also wanted to have son, but here only Kritadyuti had the son. चित्रकेतुर अति प्रीतिर यथा दारे प्रजावती न तथान्येषु संयज्ञे balam lalito anvaham. As King Chitraketu fostered his son very carefully, his affection for Queen Kritadyuti increased, but gradually he lost affection for the other wives who had no sons. So that was very natural, and it was going to happen. Tahapare tapyanatmanam garyanti abhisuyaya anpattena dukkena ragyascha nadarena cha. The other queens were extremely unhappy due to their being sonless. Because of the king's negligence toward them, they condemned themselves in envy and lamented. Digprajam striyam papam pati uscha griha sammatam suprajabhi sapatnibhir dasim iv tiraskritam. A wife who has no sons is neglected at home by her husband and dishonored by her co-wives, exactly like a maid servant. Certainly, such a woman is condemned in every respect because of a sinful life. As stated by Chanakya Pandit, Mata yasya grihe nasti bharya cha priyavadini aranyam tena gantavyam yatharanyam tatha griham. A person who has no mother at home and whose wife does not speak sweetly should go to the forest. For such a person, living at home and living in the forest are equal. Similarly, for a woman who has no son, who's not cared for by her husband, and whose co-wives neglect her, treating her like a maid servant, to go to the forest is better than to remain at home. Because self-respect is very, very important. Love and respect are very, very important for anybody to live. But at the same time, one has to understand, spiritually, we have to understand whatever anybody, what he or she is going through, it's all reactions, and should not take some extreme steps. But not everybody is spiritually advanced, not everybody is up to that level. And people may take some wrong decisions. Dasinam ko nu santapa swamina paricharyaya abhikshanam lagdamananam dasya dasiva durbhaga. Even maid servants who are constantly engaged in rendering service to the husband are honored by the husband, and thus they have nothing for which to lament. Our position, however, is that we are maid servants of the maid servant. Therefore, we are most unfortunate. Evam sandaya mananam sapatnya putra sampada ragyo asammat vrittinam viddesho balvan bhut. Shri Shukdev Goswami continued, being neglected by their husband and seeing Kritadyuti's opulence in possessing a son, Kritadyuti's co-wives always burned in envy, which became extremely strong. Vidvesha nashta matya striyo daruna chetasaha garam daduh kumaraya durmarsha nripatim prati. As their envy increased, they lost their intelligence, being extremely hard-hearted and unable to tolerate the king's neglect. They finally administered poison to the son. Wow. Kritadyutir rajananti sapatni namagham mahat supta eveti sanchintya nirikshya vyacharad grihe. Unaware of the poison administered by her co-wives, Queen Kritadyuti walked within the house, thinking that her son was sleeping deeply. She did not understand that he was dead. So that is lamentation, jubilation and lamentation, harsha and shoka. Shyanam suchiram balam upadhare manishim putramanai me bhadre iti dhatre machodaya. Thinking that her child had been sleeping for a long time, Queen Kritaduti, who was certainly very intelligent, ordered the nurse, "My dear friend, please bring my son here." Sashyanam upavrijya drishtva cha uttaralochanam pranendriyatmabhyaktam hatasmiti patradbhuvi. When the maidservant approached, the child was lying down. She saw that his eyes were turned upward. There were no signs of life. All his senses have stopped, and she could understand that the child was dead. Seeing this, she immediately cried, "Now I am doomed," and fell to the ground. So, anyway, we can stop here and continue with the stories tomorrow. See, this is what happens. Envy takes over when we don't have our desires fulfilled. And then we can do the worst thing that we can think of. And this is not the story of Kali Yuga, because he had 10 million wives. It cannot be Kali Yuga. And people are doing this yajna, so it has to be the story of Treta Yuga. So even in Treta Yuga, or maybe it's Satya Yuga, I don't know, things can go wrong. Things could happen. So all we have to do is pray to Krishna, "Please let me not have any envy in my heart. Let me not act enviously towards anybody. Let me just accept whatever you have in store for me and can carry on with my devotional service." That is the most important thing. But people can do terrible things. They become envious and angry and have all sorts of desires that are unfulfilled. So anyway, we'll stop here. See anybody has any questions or comments?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna. Please accept mine.
Prabhuji? Yes, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, you were mentioning about Srila Prabhupada's effulgence. If you can share something more on that.
You heard the whole thing? Like he was crossing the road and the policeman came?
Yes.
So that effulgence is there, and also in the paintings, many times we see the sages or the Lord also, he's shown with the effulgence around, halo around the head. So once one devotee drew a picture of Krishna with a halo around the head, and Prabhupada told him, no, Krishna has halo around his whole body. And this is the spiritual effulgence, actually. Because the spirit soul is Satchidananda, but it is full of effulgence. Like Brahm Jyoti is the effulgence of the body of Krishna. When we read about Brahm Jyoti. So Krishna's body is very effulgent. So similarly, soul is part and parcel of Krishna. So originally it is very effulgent. But we are covered over by the material modes of nature and this material body. But if somebody is spiritually advanced, means his original constitutional position is it is either developed or it is developing. So means the effulgence will come out even in the material body, which we think it is material, but it is getting spiritualized, or it is already spiritualized for spiritually advanced persons, that person will be spiritually, or his body will be effulgent. Not just the face only, his whole body will be effulgent. And that is also, it is said that when a spiritually advanced person leaves his body, for a regular person, when he leaves the body immediately becomes stiff, and it leaves, and the effulgence goes away. It becomes dark. But not for a spiritually advanced person. His body remains soft and effulgent because it has been spiritualized. And he doesn't need any makeup or anything else.
Yes, Prabhuji. And that is what is called in the modern term is like called aura, right, Prabhuji?
Aura or halo, something like that, yeah.
So that is the reason we are always like it is always better to have a association of a spiritually like Prabhupada. And now that all the spiritual seekers who is into a deep sadhana, so they automatically develop this quality like effulgence. And then I, as a neophyte soul, if I visit such a spiritually um, rooted personality, so I may get also benefited just by coming in contact to their association. That is why we should
Well,
visit.
the benefit that we get is we also get a good tendency or inclination to perform spiritual practices.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yeah, that definitely we get.
And
That's
through that,
yeah, go ahead.
and just when we see a real spiritualist, just by seeing them only, we get to realize that because of their effulgence quality and all, we realize that yes, he is the actually in this modern world, it is very difficult to find out a true spiritual master. So when we see such quality, that defines that he is the real spiritualist,
Um,
if like that.
best thing is to hear him, what he's speaking.
Yes, yes,
Of
Prabhuji.
course, by seeing him, by how he's acting, that also helps us. But better than everything else is what he's saying.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Because the Mayavadis are also spiritually, they're very advanced. They could be very austere also, very, very austere. And this austerity, yoga, any practice, it makes one spiritually advanced, definitely.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay?
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Thank you.
You're welcome. Hare Krishna. Jai Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna, thank you very